let's talk rail infrastructure, or the promise of it. The Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, and Atlanta Global Resources, a company that finances infrastructure projects in Georgia, southern United States, has signed a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, worth more than $15 billion. The agreement calls for the construction of a massive train line that would link the states that make up the NDDC and help the oil-rich Niger Delta's infrastructure shortage. The two parties signed the memorandum of understanding yesterday in Lagos during the one-day NDDC PPP 2023 summit, which has as its theme, Rewind to Rebirth, building a sustainable future through public-private partnership for progress in the Niger Delta. All right, to electric buses now. Oando Clean Energy Limited, the renewable energy business subsidiary of Oando Energy Resources, a part of the Oando PLC group of companies, put out a press release giving an update on its electric vehicle plans for Lagos State. Now, back in April 2022, OCEL and Lamata, the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, signed a memorandum of understanding to enable the successful deployment of an electric vehicle infrastructure ecosystem that includes buses, charging stations, and other supporting infrastructure. OCEL partnered with Yutong Bus Company Limited, a Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer, to produce the electric buses equipped with air conditioning and Wi-Fi. Now, Oando Clean Energy Limited has provided an update saying it has taken the next step since the signing of the MOU in 2022. The company announced that it has taken delivery of the electric mass transit buses that will kick off the proof of concept phase of their sustainable transport initiative. In addition to the arrival of the electric buses, OCEL has also taken delivery of the charging stations and spare parts necessary to ensure their effective operation. So let's talk about it. We have Dr. Sam Amadi, a Rise News analyst, joining us from our Abuja studio to discuss further. Dr. Amadi, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you make of this development from the Oando Clean Energy?
Well, I think commendable. It ties into what the Vice President said a few days ago at the University of Penn State, University of Pennsylvania, around how we can lead in the clean energy and the various opportunities it has for helping create livable communities as well as job creation and helping the economy. But then I like the fact that the MOU is detailed in terms of not just providing the buses, but also aspects of skill transfer, training relevant operators, bus operators, and also making available spare parts so that you have a sustainable project. But again, we need to tie this into the bigger macroeconomy of Lagos, Lagos State, and of course the country. You need to look into culture, you look into maybe cost efficiency, as well as not just like we had the metro line or other big projects that never roll out. But of course, I'm sure both parties have done the economics well, not just the cost of getting it done, but also sustaining it and scaling, as the case might be. In other words, this is Lagos as a modern state, and Lagos taking advantage of adaptive technology, and moving into the next century in terms of clean energy, as well as much more mobile and flexible transport system. Again, how this pans into the national transport plan. I was the chairman of the Senate Committee that did the transport sector reform. We're looking at both how you can interpolate both modes of transportation and ensure that not just that you get more mobility, ease of transportation, clean energy, reduce carbon footprint, but as well you have to move the city into a 21st century technology, both for its cost efficiency long term and other economic spillovers in terms of growth, new labor, skilling, and all that.
Dr. Amadi, I want to get your thoughts. Let me say, I don't know if we're jumping too far ahead. I want you to see a video from an Israeli startup called Electrion. They're using something called smart roads in Sweden and I think in the United States. Let's take a look.
Electrion and its unique technology developed in order to change the future of transportation. The change starts today. Electrion Smart Road quickly and efficiently transforms our public infrastructure into a source of advanced energy. Public transportation vehicles will not require any refueling or charging at any time whatsoever. So what does Electrion do? Electric vehicles will receive continuous power while the vehicle is being driven directly from the infrastructure embedded under the asphalt road, instead of carrying the heavy and expensive battery with a limited driving range and a short lifetime. With Electrion's groundbreaking technology, one can simply travel non-stop. Our city's landscape will change dramatically. No more gas stations, nor cumbersome battery charging stations. And as the number of vehicles traveling on the smart road increases, air pollution around us will decrease drastically.
All right, Dr. Amadi, I've been dying to get your thoughts on that. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, this is like new age technology. I mean, we are going beyond electric vehicles with the normal charging stations. Part of the problem in this has been on like 10 years ago or more with electric vehicles. The question is, you have to charge them. You have to create charging ports almost around everywhere. But now, what they are doing now is using road, making it, you don't have to charge. You don't have to carry batteries. You don't have to charge. The roads themselves have to charge it. Now, what I like about this is that it's not a pilot, and you can see that the CCT is not just doing this more like procuring a service. They are creating a whole ecology around it in terms of institutions that are going to provide the learning, the skill, the knowledge. So it's being sustainably managed. And I think it's possible. Can it happen in Lagos? You need to also say that not just about the product, the technology, the culture that will accept it. And of course, look at our roads. We don't even maintain it. This is going to be a high-tech road. At the same time, it requires high-tech skills. And it also needs alignment with institutions. The Detroit has to create several agencies that have to deal with testing, looking at supporting technologies that will make it work. So this is great if it comes to pass. And if it's a pilot, if it can go around the whole city, around the whole state, and maybe in the next 5, 10, 50 years, we might be talking about this as where we are globally. But again, can it happen in Lagos? Yes, it can, but then you need a lot of alignment. And so this is not just a case of MOU. This is a case of proven technology and a case of backup science and backup, managerial competence to drive it. You test run it, you pilot it, and over time you scale it out, and then it works. But probably we are not close to this.
I want to bring things back home. NERC, like Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, a body you used to head as chairman, is promising 4 million meters for Nigerians. What do you make of the promise, and where do you think we are with meter development or procurement rather?
I think the problem is, look, they said they have done 1 million, but look, if you look at the total percentage of meter rollout, it still falls back to about 40% of customers metered. So or for 70%, so it never improves, meaning that, look, as we meter more, there's replacement. Some of these meters go to replace old and disused meter. So the population of meter customers doesn't decrease significantly. Now, if we have about 10-something million registered grid electricity consumers. So if you do 4 million, and hopefully you don't have because we get new customers every day. People build new houses, cities open up, communities are metered, electrified, and so they did meter. So you might end up perhaps not closing the gap quickly. Now the question is, can they really do 4 million as planned? And 4 million of new meters or 4 million of replacement? I think that the crisis of metering requires a much more holistic approach. And the new government, Tinubu government, promised in their manifesto that they're going to focus on ending estimated billing, which means producing meters locally. We did the local content law when I was there. I'm not sure we've improved much in terms of local production. Of course, we have those who are dealing with CKDs. But the key thing here is the financials for driving meter rollout requires a much more financially viable electricity market. This is not what government will be intervening from time to time. This is a service that's coupled together with the tariff and with the investment plan of DISCO. So if the market gets financially viable, you're going to see automatic meter rollout, because it's actually in the interest of DISCOs themselves to meter all their customers as a form of revenue protection and energy conservation. So I think, yes, NEC is trying, but then you need a much more sustainable and commercially viable approach to metering.
Speaking of a commercially viable approach to, I guess, power in Nigeria, what do you make of the President Buhari signing into law the ability for states to generate, distribute, and power within their own confines?
I think the impact has been exaggerated. Look, Lagos State took license from us and generated. Akwa Ibom generates. Rivers had a strong IPP which they sold to Ebim, the owners of Ebim. So generation is not a problem. Now distribution. Yes, it's good that the law has allowed states, but the question is, can states now start having their own discourse? And how viable is that? And what happens to the existing world? What I see coming out of this is that the states can now look at areas they can fill in the gap. Take, for example, customer care. I mean, why should NEC be regulating the customer care at the communities? States can have their own regulatory agencies that use NEC regulations and existing consumer protection laws to protect their customers. So you can't have a NEC give you economic price and tariff, but then you have state distributors, regulators at the downstream using those rules to protect their customers. So we can see some kind of combination where states do what federal government cannot do well. For example, transmission. I don't expect states to build competing transmission network. That's not even economically viable. What I see is that states can also use the existing framework to expand transmission services to areas that are far-flung from the transmission network. So those kind of complementary services is what this law can help states do. It's not going to be a game changer because the economic constraints, the technical constraints, the regulatory constraints are not a matter of constitutional, laws. They are a matter of sensible businesses, good regulations, and technical work. So I think in the short to medium time, we won't see much change because states are not even viable. Most of these states are talking about can't even, set up a generating plant themselves. They have to go into some kind of business IPP framework or PP framework with private sector. And so I see the value in the long term in terms of maybe regional grids, when states come together and create regional grids like across Europe, all over the world. In fact, the idea of state-based grid is not viable. We are seeing even countries having, across countries, setting up grids that serve across country. So for me, it's been oversold because, look, the crisis is more of a market issues, commercial issues, regulatory, rather than constitutional. The states should have the power to enter into the market, but they may not be able to enter that market in the next 4 to 5 years, except you quickly change the structure of the electricity market. And again, big work. You have to sit back and audit what this law means for the way we are doing around the sector. How are you going to do right-size transmission? How do you do the discos? Will the discos suffer or answer to multiple state legislation? So a disco that's like a Bado disco, serving several states, or Benin disco, will they respond to 3-4 states that have contradicting and sometimes not complementary rules? So this is could be a nightmare if it's not properly worked out on paper. So for me, I have guarded optimism about the impact of this new law on the short to medium term.
Arise News analyst Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much for joining us from our Abuja studios.